The Great Lakes are disappearing. Not in a generation, not in a decade. Right now. In 2020, shoreline homes were collapsing into Lake Michigan, swallowed by record-high water. Today, those same shorelines have become beaches hundreds of feet wide, and billion-dollar freighters are in danger of running aground in the middle of the lake. It is the most violent swing in water levels ever recorded, and it has set the stage for a conflict that no one saw coming. This isn't a story about a gentle, cyclical drought. This is about a system breaking. A system that holds 21% of the entire planet's fresh surface water, water for 30 million people, is now lurching between extremes. The science behind the drop is more alarming than the drop itself, and just as the water recedes, a new predator has arrived at the shore, one with an unquenchable thirst for water and electricity: artificial intelligence. So, the question is not just where the water went. The question is, who gets what's left? Before we get into the engineering and the economics, a question for you. When you hear the water is disappearing, what's the first cause you think of? Let us know in the comments. The real answer is one almost nobody guesses. For the last 5 years, an alarming number of people have watched these briefings and forgotten to subscribe. These are not stories. They are warnings. If this information is critical to you, ensure you receive the next one. It's a single click, and it is important. Let's begin. To understand how wrong things have gone, you have to understand how good things looked just a few years ago. The summer of 2019 and into 2020 was an era of catastrophic abundance. Record-breaking rainfall turned the Great Lakes into a bathtub overflowing its rim. Lakes Superior, Erie, and Ontario all smashed all-time record highs. On the shores of Lake Michigan, roads disappeared. Multi-million-dollar homes, built on bluffs that had been stable for a century, slid into the water as the waves ate away the foundations from below. The United States Army Corps of Engineers, the agency that measures the lakes, worked around the clock deploying sandbags, building emergency barriers, and telling panicked homeowners there was simply too much water to control. It was a crisis of more. The narrative was set. This was the new normal. A wetter climate, fuller lakes, a permanent state of high water. It was a problem, but it was a problem of surplus. Then the pendulum swung back, with a speed that baffled even the experts who study it every day. The reversal began quietly. A series of dry autumns, a string of unusually warm winters. By October 2024, the unthinkable happened. Lake Michigan, after a decade of being above its long-term average, slipped below it. It was the first official sign that the era of high water was not just over, it had been an illusion, a brief, wet interruption in a much larger and more terrifying story of decline. Fast forward to the spring of 2026. The USAID's 6-month forecast, the document that port operators and city planners live and die by, became a declaration of deficit. Lake Superior, the largest freshwater lake on Earth by surface area, was down. Lake Ontario, the last stop before the Atlantic, was down. And Lake Michigan-Huron, the single, massive, hydrologically connected body of water that acts as the heart of the entire system, was projected to spend the entire summer boating and shipping season a full foot below its long-term average. From record high to a foot below average in just a few years. It's a swing of more than 50 inches from the 2020 peak. What happened? How does an entire inland ocean, a system containing 6 quadrillion gallons of water, simply begin to vanish into thin air? The answer doesn't happen in the heat of summer. It happens in the dead of winter. Here is the paradox that defines the survival of the Great Lakes. The most dangerous time of year for water levels is not July, it's January. The lakes lose the most water when it is brutally, savagely cold. This is the evaporation paradox. Hydrologists like Dr. Drew Gronwald at the University of Michigan describe it as a climate tug-of-war. On one side is precipitation and runoff from rivers. On the other side is evaporation. For 100 years, that tug-of-war was a relatively balanced game. Now, one side is starting to cheat. Imagine a normal winter. The air turns cold. The surface of the lakes flash freezes, forming a vast cap of ice. This ice acts like a lid on a pot, sealing the water underneath, protecting it from the dry winter air above. The lake essentially hibernates, preserving its volume. But in recent years, those winters have been warmer. The ice cap fails to form, or it forms late and stays for a shorter time. The lakes are left exposed. Now picture a wave of polar vortex air, sub-zero and bone-dry, screaming down from the Arctic. It hits the relatively warm, open water of Lake Superior or Lake Michigan. The temperature difference between the water and the air is extreme, 40 or 50 degrees. The result is an explosion of evaporation. The lake surface steams like a giant heated pool. Millions, billions of gallons of water vaporize directly into the atmosphere. You are watching the lakes drain into the sky. When you see the news reports from Buffalo or Muskegon, buried under 6 feet of lake-effect snow, you are witnessing the second half of this process. That snow is the evaporated water from the Great Lakes, now falling back to Earth. But it's not falling back into the lakes. It lands on roofs, on roads, in fields, where much of it will melt and run off somewhere else, or evaporate again. It is a one-way transaction. The lake loses the water, and the land gets the snow. They are witnessing the steaming hot tub effect, and it's bleeding the lakes dry. The numbers are staggering. In a single, cold, ice-free winter month, the amount of water lost to evaporation can be more than the entire flow of a major river. The recent string of warm winters has supercharged this process. According to Megan Royal, the hydraulic engineer in charge of forecasting for the Army Corps of Engineers, they observed not just a dry fall, but they suspect there was above normal evaporation over this winter. Suspect, because the scale is so vast, it's difficult to even measure accurately. This is the engine of the decline, a fundamental change in the season that was supposed to be the lake's recovery period. Winter is no longer a time of rest. It has become a time of loss, a relentless, invisible drain that is now pulling the entire system down, inch by measurable inch. The dropping of the lakes is a slow, quiet crisis until it hits your wallet, and that is happening right now. The Great Lakes St. Lawrence Seaway is an economic superhighway, a marine network that supports a $3.1 trillion regional GDP. Every year, massive 1,000-foot-long freighters carry iron ore from a port on Lake Superior to a steel mill in Ohio. They move grain from Wisconsin to be shipped to Europe. They transport cement, stone, and coal, the bedrock materials of North American industry. Every single one of these ships depends on one thing: deep water. Eric Peace knows this better than anyone. He's the vice president of the Lake Carriers Association and a retired Coast Guard commander. His members don't think about water levels in feet. They think in inches. An inch of water is not an abstract measurement. It's money. It's cargo. It's survival. Here's how it works. A 1,000-foot freighter, one of the Lakers that are the workhorses of the system, is designed to carry its maximum load at a certain draft, how deep it sits in the water. For every inch of water the lake loses, one of these ships has to leave behind between 50 and 270 tons of cargo. They call it light loading. The ship can't sit as deep, so it can't carry as much weight, or its hull will scrape along the bottom of the shipping channels, like the St. Mary's River that connects Lake Superior to Lake Huron. Let's do the math. Lake Michigan-Huron is down 12 inches from its long-term average. A single freighter that could carry 70,000 tons of iron ore now has to leave thousands of tons sitting on the dock in Duluth. That's ore that won't become steel. That's steel that won't become a car. To move the same amount of total cargo, you now need more trips, more fuel, more time, more money. The cost gets passed down the entire supply chain, from the mine to the factory to the consumer. And it's not just the main channels, it's the ports and harbors themselves. Marinas, where recreational boaters spend millions of dollars every summer, are finding their docks high and dry. In the spring of 2026, marina operators across northern Michigan and Wisconsin were faced with a ruinous choice: pay for emergency dredging to deepen their harbors, or tell their customers their boats are stuck in the mud. Many had to order extra pier extensions just to get floating docks to reach the retreating water. This is the economic squeeze. It is a problem compounding on itself. Lower water reveals another threat: shoaling. The sediment on the river and lake bottoms, which was never a problem when the water was deep, suddenly becomes a navigational hazard. Channels that were once deep enough become clogged. The Army Corps of Engineers has to constantly dredge them, an expensive and endless battle against gravity and geology. Then there's the ice, or the lack of it. The same warm winters that cause the evaporation also create treacherous conditions for shipping. Instead of a solid, stable sheet of ice that icebreakers can smash through, you get shifting, unpredictable ice flows that can jam up narrow channels like the St. Mary's River. In early 2026, the U.S. Great Lakes Fleet lost 82 ship days, over 1,900 hours of transport time, because of extreme winter weather and a failing fleet of icebreakers. The primary U.S. Coast Guard heavy icebreaker, the CGC Mackinac, is aging. The system is brittle. Eric Peace put it starkly: "We only get 9 months of shipping. It's a loss of a significant amount of time. It is a perfect storm. The water is disappearing from below due to evaporation, and the time available to use what's left is being squeezed from above by winter chaos. A system designed for stability is being whipsawed by volatility." A $50.9 billion annual cargo industry, built on the assumption of predictable water levels, is now facing a future where every inch matters. And into this crisis of scarcity, a new player has arrived, one with an appetite for resources that makes all previous demands look small. Just as the lakes reached their most vulnerable state in a decade, the tech industry came calling, not for the scenery, for the water. A new resource war is beginning in the Great Lakes Basin, and the aggressor isn't a neighboring state or a foreign country. It is artificial intelligence. Building and running the AI models that power our modern world requires a staggering amount of computational power. That power is housed in massive, anonymous buildings called data centers, and these data centers generate a colossal amount of heat. To keep from melting down, they need to be cooled, and the cheapest, most efficient way to cool them is with water. Lots of it. According to researchers at Purdue University, a single data center can consume up to 300,000 gallons of water per day. Some of the larger ones consume much, much more. For years, tech companies built these centers in places like Arizona and California, where land was available. But those places are running out of water, so they started looking for somewhere with an apparent abundance. They looked at a map, and they saw the Great Lakes, a region holding 21% of the world's fresh water. To them, it looked like an infinite resource. The rush started in late 2025. It was a gold rush for cheap water and power. A $3 billion data center was proposed for Benton Harbor, Michigan. A massive Amazon Web Services facility was announced in Hobart, Indiana. Similar projects popped up in Ohio and Wisconsin. Tech giants, whose names are synonymous with the digital future, were quietly buying up land and water rights all around the shrinking lakes. It set up an immediate and ferocious conflict. Kirsten James, a program director for water at the nonprofit Ceres, laid out the battle lines. As she told The Guardian in a December 2025 expose that blew the story wide open, the Great Lakes region is becoming among the most data center dense states in the region. The problem, she explained, is that the immense water demands can conflict with communities' water resource planning efforts. That is the polite way of saying it. Here's the blunter version. Just as towns are being asked to conserve, just as boaters are watching their lakes disappear, just as shippers are light-loading their cargo, a multi-trillion-dollar industry has arrived to stick a giant straw into the water supply. A straw for cooling servers, so that an AI can write a poem or generate a video. Are these tech giants entitled to this water? It's a debate happening right now in town halls and community meetings all across the basin. Tell us where you stand. The tech companies have a clever legal argument. The Great Lakes Compact of 2005 is a landmark agreement between the U.S. states and Canadian provinces that border the lakes. Its primary function is to ban the diversion of water outside of the Great Lakes Basin. It was designed to stop a pipeline from being built to ship water to Phoenix or Los Angeles. And it has worked. But the data centers aren't diverting the water. They are using it right there, on the shores of the lakes. They are exploiting a loophole. The compact was designed to prevent the water from being exported. It has very little to say about a new industry arriving to consume it on site. The water they use for cooling doesn't just disappear. Much of it is discharged back into the system, but at a much higher temperature. This thermal pollution can create localized dead zones, disrupting fish spawning and promoting algae blooms. It's a double blow. They take the water out, and they poison what they put back. So now the stage is set. On one side, 30 million people who depend on the lakes for drinking water, for their jobs, for their way of life. They are being told to prepare for less. On the other side, an industry with more money than most countries. An industry that sees the Great Lakes not as a precious, fragile ecosystem, but as a free coolant. An industry that arrived at the exact moment of maximum vulnerability. The water levels are dropping, and the demand is exploding. Something has to give. If you know someone who lives in Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, or anywhere in this region, They need to see this. The conversation about the future of the Great Lakes is happening now, and most people don't even know the stakes. Sharing this briefing is how the information gets to the people who are living the consequences. And letting us know you are engaged, with a simple like, helps more than you know. It tells the platforms that this story matters. Faced with a crisis, humanity's first instinct is to engineer a solution. To measure, to model, to build our way out of the problem. In the Great Lakes, that fight is being led by a small group of scientists and engineers who are on the front lines of a battle against geological time and a changing climate. Their headquarters is the Detroit district of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. From an office in downtown Detroit, hydraulic engineer Megan Royal and her team at the Watershed Hydrology section are responsible for doing something that seems impossible: predicting the future. Every week, they issue the official water level update. Every month, they publish a 6-month forecast. These documents are the holy writ of the Great Lakes. They are built from a complex stew of data: precipitation measurements, snowpack depth across the basin, evaporation models, inflow from hundreds of rivers, and outflow through the St. Lawrence River. For years, their models were reliable, operating within a predictable range of highs and lows. The system was complex, but it was stable. Now, that stability is gone. The models are being pushed to their limits, forced to account for a level of volatility they were never designed for. The forecasts have become less about prediction and more about damage control. They are no longer asking, where will the water be? They are asking, how bad is it going to get? The engineering response is a constant, grinding war, fought on multiple fronts. The most immediate battle is dredging. As water levels drop, the bottoms of shipping channels that were once safely deep become obstacles. The Army Corps operates a fleet of dredge vessels that are in constant motion, scooping out silt and sand from the St. Mary's River, the Detroit River, and the navigation channels in dozens of commercial ports. It is an unglamorous, unending, and incredibly expensive job. They are literally trying to dig their way out of a drought. Every cubic yard of sediment they remove buys a freighter another inch of clearance, and it is never enough. Then there are the locks. The Soo locks at Sault Ste. Marie are the linchpin of the entire system. These massive concrete chambers lift and lower 1,000-foot ships the 21 feet between the water level of Lake Superior and Lake Huron. They are one of the great engineering marvels of the 19th and 20th centuries. And they are old. There is only one lock, the Poe lock, large enough to handle the giant 1,000-foot Lakers. If that single lock were to fail, the entire iron ore and steel industry of North America would grind to a halt within weeks. For decades, there has been a plan to build a new, second Poe-sized lock. It was authorized, it was studied, it was delayed. Now, with the system under unprecedented stress, construction is finally underway. It's a multi-billion-dollar project, a race against time and decay. But it's an engineering solution for a known problem. It's not a solution for the bigger problem, the lack of water itself. This is the hard limit of engineering. The Corps can deepen a channel. They can build a better lock. They cannot make it rain. They cannot stop the winter evaporation. All their work is reactive, a response to a crisis that is being driven by forces far beyond their control. They are masters of managing the plumbing. They are not masters of the climate that fills it, and the climate is changing.